Hello everyone, welcome to GS Core. From today's session, we are going to start a topic detailing series. And in this class, we are going to discuss about the subject of science and technology. Science and technology, as you know, is an important topic for prelims examination. Though in the syllabus of UPSC for prelims examination, they have not explicitly mentioned about science and technology. They have only mentioned about general science. But despite that, the weightage of this subject, if you go through previous year questions, you will find that has increased. And as a result of that, it is important to discuss what are the different topics and subtopics that one should study in order to score good marks in this particular subject. Now, in today's class, we will discuss about three important technologies that are a part of science and technology. And those technologies are space technology, defense technology, and nuclear technology. So today, we will discuss about the topics and subtopics that we are supposed to study for space, defense, and nuclear technology. But before we start, let me tell you one important aspect of this subject of science and technology. If you go through previous year questions of science and technology, you will find that most of the questions are current affairs based questions. And if that is the case, it is important for us to understand that these topics that we will be discussing will help you in understanding the current affairs part as well. That means which news articles you should focus on, that you will be able to get idea from these topic detailing classes as well. So this is a part 1 of science and technology topic detailing. We will cover 3 videos for science and technology to understand the topics that one has to study for this particular subject. Let us start with space technology. First technology under science and technology is space. Now, what are the topics that one should study from space technology? So, if you go through previous year questions, you'll find that the most important topic that you should study for space is orbits. Now, there are different types of orbits. For example, we have galactocentric orbits. Secondly, we have heliocentric orbits, and thirdly, we have geocentric orbits. Now, from the perspective of UPSC, it is important to study geocentric orbits. That means orbits around Earth are important from the exam's perspective. But which geocentric orbits one should study? So one should be aware of different geocentric orbits like low Earth orbit, which is popularly known as LEO. Secondly, medium Earth orbit, which is popularly known as MEO. Thirdly, geosynchronous orbit, that is GSO. And as a special case of geosynchronous orbit, one should also be aware of geostationary orbit, and that is GEO. So these different orbits one should be aware of. Along with these orbits, there are certain other orbits as well, like polar orbits, and as a special case of polar orbit, there is sun synchronous polar orbit. Sun synchronous polar orbit, that is SSPO. Right? So this is one of the important topics that you must be aware of, because once you understand different topics, once you understand what is the preferred satellite in these orbits, you will be able to understand various news articles that will be there in the newspaper, and also what kind of launch vehicle will be used by ISRO to launch satellites in these orbits. Fine. So this particular part of orbits is a static part of space technology. That is first. Now, once we are done with orbits, the second topic that is important from space technology is launch vehicles. Launch vehicles. Now, first of all, what exactly do we mean by launch vehicles? Launch vehicles are the vehicles, or they are the systems that are used to place satellites in their desired orbit. You must have heard about different types of launch vehicles. For example, in India, right now, we have the most important vehicle as Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Then we also have Geosynchronous Launch Vehicle, GSLV, and recently we have also developed SSLV, that is SSLV, right? So these important launch vehicles are important from the exams perspective as well. Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, and Geosynchronous Launch Vehicle. These are certain important launch vehicles. So launch vehicles are rocket systems. So under this, which launch vehicles you should be aware of? You should be aware of launch vehicles like SLV-3, which was the first launch vehicle of India, Satellite Launch Vehicle 3. Then ASLV, that is Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle. Then PSLV, that is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Then GSLV, and one of the important variants of GSLV, that is GSLV Mark III, which is now renamed as LVM-3. Fine. So these are certain important launch vehicles. Along with these launch vehicles, now you also have to study about SSLV, that is Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, which is developed recently in India. Along with that, there are news articles coming related to RLV, Reusable Launch Vehicle, and also there are certain developments related to next generation launch vehicle as well. Fine. So these are static parts. These launch vehicles are a part of static portion of the syllabus, and these are the current affairs launch vehicles. Right? So that is the second important aspect of space technology. Now, once we are done with this, the next topic that is important from the exams perspective is satellite missions, or satellites. Firstly, satellites. Now, the way we have different types of orbits, different type of launch vehicles, we have different type of satellites as well. And these satellites can be categorized on the basis of their application. Now, for example, there are remote sensing satellites. that are also called as Earth observation satellites, remote sensing satellites, or Earth observation satellites. That is first. Then we also have navigation satellites, navigation satellites. Then third type of satellites that we have is telecommunication satellites, telecommunication satellites. Then we also have weather forecast satellites or weather satellites, weather satellites. And lastly, we have space exploration satellites. Space exploration satellites. Right, so these are different types of satellites that we have on the basis of their application. For example, in India, we have remote sensing satellites in the form of IRS series, Indian Remote Sensing Series. Now, in the latest news articles, you must have came across remote sensing satellites as EOS series. Then navigation satellites in India are in the form of IRNSS, Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, which is also called as NAVIC, that is navigation with Indian constellation. Right, so that is also an important aspect of the subject. Then we have telecommunication satellites like GSAT. Then weather satellites are also there in India, like Meghatropics. And then we also have space exploration satellites like AstroSat, the upcoming missions like Aditya L1 and all. Right, so these important aspects that you are supposed to study for the satellites. Now, when we focus on these different types of satellites, our focus primarily should be on new launches. New launches by ISRO are the most important factor. Why? Because there is more or there is a greater chance that UPSC will ask question on those satellites. For example, in 2013, we launched Mangalyaan, and that question was asked by UPSC in 2014's examination. Similarly, there are questions that UPSC has asked on satellites launched by other space agencies as well. For example, there was a question on ELISA, which was launched by, or which was the project in use of European Space Agency. So these important aspects are need to be focused upon in order to study for the prelims examination. So we have to study about the latest or newer launches by ISRO primarily, and if there are significant developments going on in the world space technology by, let's say, NASA, by European Space Agency, by Roscosmos, by Japanese Space Administration, then those news articles also become important from the exams perspective. Right? So that is the third aspect related to space technology. And then the last aspect is of space mission, latest space missions. So you can consider these latest space missions as an extension of satellites itself, but we will discuss it as a separate topic. Latest space missions. Latest space missions. Now, which space missions will be considered as latest? So, those space missions which have been launched in the recent past. It is not that UPSC will ask questions on those space missions which were launched, let's say 6 months back, 1 year back. That is not the case. UPSC may ask questions from missions which were, let's say, 2 years old. And that's why it is important to focus on those space missions which have been launched in the recent past. So, which missions for example, we need to focus on. For example, we can focus on missions like, let's say, the mission of NASA, James Webb Space Telescope, JWST. Right? So this is an important aspect. Similarly, you can even focus on the missions like Aditya L1. Now Aditya L1 as of now has not been launched, but news articles are there on Aditya L1. Similarly, Shukrayaan, an upcoming mission of ISRO towards Venus, for the exploration of Venus. So these kind of missions, then the latest launch of Chandrayaan 3, and as a result of Chandrayaan 3, even Chandrayaan 2 and Chandrayaan 1 becomes important, right? Similarly, there are other missions that are in pipeline. For example, Gaganyaan mission, and as a result of Gaganyaan mission, it is important to know about Indian Space Station as well, right? Gaganyaan will be launched in 2024, and then after 4 to 5 years after Gaganyaan, we will have the mission of Indian Space Station, right? So these are important missions that you should focus on. Other important missions are like, let's say, of different space agencies. China has carried out its own space station mission, so that becomes important for us. Tiangong it is. Tiangong. Then there are various missions that have been launched for the exploration of Mars, be it Mars Orbiter mission of ISRO or other space missions like Perseverance of NASA, which was launched for the exploration of Mars. Then next important missions are like, let's say, as a part of New Frontiers program of NASA, NASA has launched a mission to explore the asteroid Bennu, and that mission is OSIRIS-REx. So this OSIRIS-REx is a part of New Frontiers program of NASA, and it is a mission to explore an asteroid named Bennu and to return samples from that particular asteroid. So these are certain important missions you must be aware of. One more important mission is DART mission, which was carried out by NASA in 2022. What is DART mission? DART mission is Double Asteroid Redirection Test, wherein NASA made it sure that asteroid which was supposed to strike on the Earth's surface was diverted towards other direction, so that Earth is protected from the asteroid, right? So that was the DART mission that NASA has carried out in 2022. Fine. So these important developments that you must be aware of. And apart from these latest space missions, last topic. So we can say that these latest missions are those missions which are seen in the news articles. So those missions which you see in the newspaper articles, they become important from the exams perspective. Fine. And then after latest mission, some administrative developments. Become important from the exams perspective. What kind of administrative developments? You must be aware of the new Indian space policy. So that Indian space policy becomes important for us, because under that space policy, India is trying to give boost for the participation of private sector in the exploration of space. And for that, India has also established certain important institutions like NSIL, New Space India Limited. Also, India has established one more important organization named InSpace. So these organizations like NSIL, InSpace become important from the exams perspective, and also India's space policy. India's space policy becomes important from the exams perspective, right? So these are certain important topics that one has to study for space technology in order to cover prelims examination. Clear? So that is first technology. Now we will move to our second technology, and that is defense technology. Second is defense technology. Defense technology, though not mentioned in the syllabus of even mains examination, questions have been asked both in mains as well as in prelims examination. So this defense technology chapter is important from the prelims perspective as well. You can take example of prelims 2023, wherein question was asked on the ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. So ballistic missiles and cruise missile concept was asked in 2023's prelims examination, and that's why you can say that that was a part of static syllabus. But if you go to previous year's questions beyond or before 2023, you'll find that most of the questions related to defense technology were from current affairs. And that's why we can say that for defense, it is important to balance between static part as well as current affairs. So, which topics are important under defense technology? Firstly, the topic of missiles is the topic on which questions have been asked number of times by UPSC. Be it prelims examination of 2023, wherein they asked about ballistic and cruise missiles, or prelims examination of 2022, wherein they asked a question on fractional orbital bombardment system, which is related to hypersonic missiles, right? So now in missiles, which topics are important? Broadly, two topics are important, and they are ballistic missiles, and secondly, cruise missiles. So here, firstly, you should be aware of the concepts related to ballistic missiles. What exactly are ballistic missiles? How they are launched? What kind of role gravity plays in the launch of ballistic missiles? What are the advantages of ballistic missiles? Are these missiles precise, or whether these missiles can be detected by enemy in mid-air? So all those aspects you should be aware of related to ballistic missiles. Similarly, for cruise missiles, what kind of engine do they use? Are they low altitudinal missiles or high altitudinal missiles? Whether these cruise missiles can be maneuvered by us or not? Are they precise or not? What kind of warhead do they carry? And then what are different types of cruise missiles that we have in India? Right, so that should be the focus. So here, for ballistic missiles, you must be aware of Agni missile range or Agni missile series. Agni missile series. We have total 5 Agni missiles, Agni 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and UPSC has asked a question on Agni missile 5 in the recent past. Similarly, you must be aware of the developments related to ballistic missiles like ballistic missile defense. Ballistic missile defense, that is BMD, right? Then for cruise missiles, you must be aware of BrahMos missiles, which is a joint venture between India and Russia. Then there are certain recent developments going on in the cruise missiles, and those are in the form of hypersonic cruise missiles. Hypersonic cruise missiles. Right, so these are two important aspects under missiles. But apart from that, you must also be aware of hypersonic glide vehicle. Hypersonic glide vehicle, HGV. Right? Because in 2022, UPSC has asked one question on FOBS, Fractional Orbital Bombardment System, and that question was inspired from hypersonic glide vehicles, which are hypersonic missiles. Then you must also be aware of anti-missile systems. Anti-missile systems like S-400 Triumph. Like S-400 Triumph. Even ballistic missile defense is an anti-missile system. Then there are other anti-missile systems like Barak 8. Then there is one anti-missile system named NASAMS, National Advanced Surface to Air Missile System 2, which will be procured by India from USA. So that is anti-missile system. And then the recent developments. Recent developments related to missiles. Various missiles are developed by DRDO. You must be aware of those different missiles. And in case any other country comes up with a peculiar technology related to missile, then that becomes important from the exam's perspective. Okay, so that is the first topic of missiles. Now, after missiles, the next topic that is important from defense technology is aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers. Now, aircraft carriers are warships, and they act as a seagoing airbase. That means they'll be able to make sure that fighter aircrafts are able to take off and land on these warships, which will be there inside the sea. So, for India, you must be aware of the latest developments related to aircraft carriers. So right now we have 2 aircraft carriers with us, and that is INS Vikramaditya, which was procured by us or by Indian Navy from Russia, and second is INS Vikrant, which is an aircraft carrier developed indigenously in India. Right, so these 2 are the important aircraft carriers that you must be aware of, and any other latest development, recent development related to aircraft carriers, you must be aware of. Recent developments. Fine, so that is the topic of aircraft carriers, a relatively smaller topic. Next is, after aircraft carriers, next topic is of submarines. Under submarines, firstly, you must be aware of types of submarines. What are different types of submarines? Firstly, in broader way, submarines are classified into diesel electric powered submarines. Diesel electric powered submarines. And secondly, they are also classified as nuclear powered submarines. Nuclear powered submarines. Right? And then different examples of diesel electric powered submarines with Indian Navy and examples of nuclear powered submarines with Indian Navy. Further, nuclear powered submarines are classified into two types. Which are they? First is submarine ship. Ballistic nuclear, which is popularly called as SSBN. Submarine ship, ballistic nuclear. These are nuclear powered submarines that can launch ballistic missile. And then we have other type of nuclear powered submarine. It is submarine ship nuclear. Submarine ship nuclear, that is SSN. Fine. So these different types of submarines and their examples you must be aware of. So that is first. Secondly, apart from the static topic of classification or types of submarines, you must also be aware of latest or recent developments that are going on in the field of submarine, like Project 75 and its follow-up project, that is Project 75I. Project 75 and Project 75I. Why this is important? Because under this particular project, in the month of January 2023, we commissioned one important submarine, and that was INS Wagir. And towards the end of this year, that means by December 2023, we would commission one more submarine under Project 75, and that is INS Wagshir. And that's why Project 75 is important. This Project 75 is a project between India and France. Now, to build on the development of Project 75, there is a follow-up project. It is Project 75I. This was in association with France. This project, Project 75I, will be an indigenous project. Fine. So these recent developments related to submarines you must be aware of. Also, apart from these Project 75 and Project 75I, if any other recent development is there, then that becomes important from the prelims perspective. Clear? So that is about the topic of submarines. Then next topic is of warships. Warships. Now for India, primarily 4 warships are important. First is aircraft carriers, which we have already referred to. Aircraft carriers. They are also warships. Then next is missile destroyers. Missile destroyers, or simply destroyers. Then we have frigates, which are relatively smaller warships, and then we have corvettes. Right? So these are different type of warships that you must be aware of. Then related to these, there are certain developments going on. For example, for aircraft carriers, we have already discussed that we have developed an indigenous aircraft carrier named INS Vikrant. Then for missile destroyers, there is a project going on right now, and that project is 15B. Under project 15B, we have commissioned certain important destroyers like INS Marmagaon. So you must be aware of important destroyers that are getting commissioned under project 15B. Now for frigates, there is one more project, and it is project 17A. Project 17A. Project 17A. Under that, we are developing certain important frigates for our Indian Navy. And then we have a project for the development of corvettes, which has been completed in the recent past, and that was project 28. Fine. So these are certain important warships that we must be aware of. And apart from this, if there is any recent development related to warships, then that becomes important for our exams perspective. Right? So that is about warships. Then the next topic is of fighter aircrafts. Fighter aircrafts. For fighter aircrafts, it is important to know about the generations of fighter aircrafts. Generations. There are, as of now, 5 generations of fighter aircrafts. So you must be aware of basic aspects of those generations, especially generation 5, generation 4A and generation 4. These important generations and their features you must be aware of, and which Indian fighter aircrafts belong to which generation, that is also an important topic of UPSC's prelims examination. Then apart from the generations, there are certain important developments that are going on in the field of fighter aircrafts. Like we have procured Rafale. So you must be aware of the features of Rafale. What exactly are the features? Does it have its own electronic warfare system? Does it have ability to take off from the higher altitudinal air bases and all? So those kind of features you must be aware of. Then there are latest developments related to LCA Tejas. We are coming up with an upgradation in LCA Tejas in the form of LCA Tejas Mark 1A, and then Tejas is being taken to the next category, wherein it will not remain a light combat aircraft, but it will become a medium combat aircraft, and that is also an important development from the exams perspective. Similarly, we are also coming up with other fighter aircrafts that we will be able to use on our indigenously developed aircraft carriers. Right? So those are certain important developments that you must be aware of. Then helicopters. Latest developments related to helicopters like LCH Prachand, Light Combat Helicopter Prachand. Then we have procured certain important helicopters from USA like Apache helicopter, Chinook helicopter and all. So those developments also become important from the exams perspective, because they may ask a question on that in the match the following, or they may give you options wherein you will have to find out which pairs are correctly matched with respect to the helicopter and country from which it has been procured. Right, so that is about fighter aircrafts and helicopters. And then the last topic that is important from the exams perspective is of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. So UAVs have become important in the recent past, and UPSC has also asked few questions on UAVs. Like firstly, you must be aware of what exactly do we mean by UAVs. Then there are certain important types of UAVs on the basis of altitude at which they can fly and their endurance time. And those types are Tier 1 UAVs, Tier 2 UAVs, Tier 2 plus UAVs and Tier 3 UAVs. So this classification is on the basis of the altitude at which they can fly and their endurance time. So that is one of the static part that you must be aware of. Similarly, there is one more static part, and that is applications of UAV. There are applications of UAV in civilian sector as well as in military. And UPSC has already asked a question on applications of drones, which are nothing but unmanned aerial vehicles only, right? Then the developments related to Indian UAVs. You must be aware of the UAVs that we have in India, like Lakshya, Nishant, Rustam 2, and the upcoming developments like Ghatak. Ghatak is an important development related to UAVs in India, right? And then apart from Indian UAVs, you must also be aware of the UAVs that we are procuring from other countries like USA and Israel. For example, MQ-9B is an important UAV that we have procured from USA. Then there are other developments related to UAV, like the UAVs that were used by Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war, and that was kamikaze drones or kamikaze UAV. So what exactly do we mean by kamikaze drones, kamikaze UAV? How do they function? And do we have kamikaze UAV in India? That is also an important point from the prelims perspective, right? So these are certain important developments, important topics that you must be aware of for the prelims examination, and these are the topics related to defense technology. So for defense, you'll have to balance between static part as well as the current affairs. Mostly questions have been asked from current developments, but you must be aware UPSC can give you questions on static portion as well, the way they have asked a question on ballistic missiles and cruise missiles in prelims 2023, right? So that is about defense technology. And the last technology for this video is nuclear technology. Let us discuss which topics are important from the nuclear technology chapter. So third technology is nuclear technology. Nuclear technology. Now, nuclear technology chapter can be divided into two parts. In first part, it is important to study the technological aspects related to nuclear technology. And in the second part, it is important to study diplomatic aspects related to nuclear technology. So we will also divide nuclear technology in two parts. Firstly, technological aspects. So which technological aspects are important for nuclear technology? Firstly, you must be aware of nuclear science. Nuclear science. That means basic concepts related to nuclear science. What exactly do we mean by atom? What are different subatomic particles? What is strong nuclear force? What is weak nuclear force? What is nuclear binding energy? What is radioactivity? What is half-life? What do we mean by isotopes? What are the different isotopes? Fissile isotopes, fertile isotopes. Those are important topics that you must be aware of under nuclear science, right? Once you are done with this basic conceptual clarity related to nuclear technology, next important part is nuclear reactions. Nuclear reactions. This is also a conceptual part wherein firstly you must know about nuclear fission. Nuclear fission. How nuclear fission is carried out. What are fissile materials? What are the different types of fissile materials needed for nuclear fission reaction? Does India have fissile material reserves in India? What is the nature of thorium that we have in abundance in India? That is important here. Secondly, nuclear fusion reaction is also important. Nuclear fusion. What exactly do we mean by nuclear fusion reaction that occurs in the stars? What is nuclear fusion reaction in laboratory, which is also called as DT fusion? DT fusion means deuterium and tritium fusion reaction that we carry out in laboratory under high temperature and high pressure conditions. And related to nuclear fusion reaction, you must also be aware of ITER experiment. ITER experiment. What is ITER experiment? ITER experiment is International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor that is being established in Cadarache in France. And India is a party to this ITER experiment that is being carried out in France. Then related developments to nuclear fusion reaction are artificial sun experiment of China, wherein they are also using nuclear fusion reaction to produce nuclear energy. Then for nuclear fusion, you should also be aware of different terms like tokamak. What exactly do we mean by tokamak? Because tokamak is a reactor that is being used in various experiments using which nuclear fusion, wherein nuclear fusion is being used to develop nuclear energy, right? So that is about nuclear reactions. So once you are aware of this, next part is nuclear reactors. Nuclear reactors. How do they function? Functioning of nuclear reactors. Then there are different terms or different components of nuclear reactors like the core of nuclear reactor, then moderator, coolant and control rods, right? So these important components you must be aware of. And then finally, types of nuclear reactors. This is very important. Types of nuclear reactors is an important part under nuclear technology. Fine, so that is about nuclear reactors. Then next topic under nuclear technology is Indian nuclear program. Indian nuclear program. This Indian nuclear program consists of 3 stages. First stage is of pressurized heavy water reactor stage. Second stage is of fast breeder reactor stage. Third stage is of advanced heavy water reactor stage. These three stages have been given by the father of Indian nuclear program, and that is Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha, right? So these stages are important. What kind of fuel is being used in them? What is the coolant? What is the moderator? What is the output of different stages? That becomes important from the exams perspective, right? Then after Indian nuclear program, the next topic is applications. Applications of nuclear technology. Now, applications of nuclear technology are not only restricted in energy or in defense sector. There are other applications of nuclear technology as well. For example, nuclear technology is used in medical sector, it is used in agriculture sector, it is used in industries, it is used in carbon dating and all. So all those important applications you must be aware of related to nuclear technology. And then apart from these important technological aspects, if there is any new technological development related to nuclear technology, that also becomes important from the exams perspective. So next, recent developments. Recent developments related to nuclear technology. Right? So that completes technological aspect of nuclear technology. Now there is a second leg to nuclear technology, and that is diplomatic aspects. Diplomatic aspects. And under diplomatic aspects, one must be aware of multilateral export control regime. Multilateral export control regime. And under this multilateral export control regime, there are four important developments or four important topics. They are, first is NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group. As a part of NSG, one must be aware of NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. One must be aware of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. Then as a part of IAEA, one must be aware of additional protocol related to India. Additional protocol. Then the second important topic under multilateral export control regimes is MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime. Third is Wassenaar Arrangement. Wassenaar Arrangement. And fourth is Australia Group. Australia Group. So these are four important multilateral export control regimes. Out of these four, this is important. NSG is important. Why NSG is important? Because India is not a member of only one multilateral export control regime, and that is NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group. We are a member of MTCR, Wassenaar Arrangement and Australia Group. Right? So these are certain important topics that you must be aware of. And as a part of the diplomatic aspects, one also need to study Indian nuclear policy. Indian nuclear policy. Though it is a static topic, it may be asked by UPSC, which of the following are the features of Indian nuclear policy. Then one also must study about CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, right? So that is about the diplomatic aspects that one should study under nuclear technology. So with this, we can conclude our discussion of different technologies and the topics under those technologies that are important from the prelims exams perspective. In the end, we can say that for science and technology and for the topics like space, defense and nuclear technology, it is important to discuss, important to study the static part related to these technologies, but our focus primarily should be on current affairs. With this, let us conclude this video. Thank you.